I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome. West Point, Mississippi. Turkey season's right over the horizon.
Yeah.
You can kind of see it, feel it, hear it.
Deer season winds down this weekend.
Yeah,
Man,
it does. It does.
Don't get my mind off. We got work to do between now and then.
It's a very busy time between deer season
Still
and
got
turkey
meat
season
week
here.
ahead
Yeah.
at Tox's place.
Yep.
Coming up,
We're going to
coming
try
up.
to do a remote podcast down there as well.
Yeah.
All right. From Shimula.
I threw it out knowing good and well that Richie would be the buzzkill and say, no way can I move all this stuff down there and go to all that. And Bobby immediately says, oh, yeah, he can do that.
He can do that.
Buzzkill. No. We'll make that work one way or another.
There you go.
Yeah. So Richie's got a new name, Tox. You may have missed that. It's Rerun.
Okay.
Rerun?
Rerun. Yeah. And he answers to it.
I that was a bad job on my part replying in that group text yesterday as rerun.
Yeah.
So,
You accepted it.
so I guess
Richie
I
Rerun Davenport.
Uh-huh.
You're going to have to change your Insta handle.
Oh, when I look around, I'm looking at Lanny. What's going on? And you said you had a current event you thought we ought to mention.
Oh, we're going to get right into
Let's
that.
just get
I
right
mean,
into
just
it,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to, kind of bring up more stuff that's going on, kind of on the fringe of things. This was actually has to do with Pennsylvania and kind of one subject that we've talked about a pretty good bit, and that's the use of technology in hunter harvest and the laws and kind of how the laws are written. But so in February of last year, a guy in Lancaster, Joshua Wiggenroth, was charged with, let me get this right, using illegal electronic devices during hunting, disturbing game or wildlife. And he appealed it, and the courts looked at it and decided that the laws were quite archaic because what happened was I think the wardens posed like they had a deer that wasn't been harvested. He came in with a drone and located the deer, located a deer, but didn't locate the down deer, and he proceeded to get charged with use of electronics for hunting. But he appealed it, and the court sided with him, and as of yesterday, they dropped the case against him. So it'd be interesting to see how this precedent ripples across to other states with the use of electronics and drone in hunting, and more than that, game recovery. Because as we know, it's a very good tool to prevent wanton waste. So
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope, so it deserves attention because things have changed, and the ethics of what we do have not changed.
No.
Although there's different things interpreted different in different states and all that. So it is probably very healthy for that to get revisited objectively.
It'll be an interesting subject. And really among hunters, deciding amongst themselves, like, where are we going to draw the line?
That's right, because clearly the old ways do not take into consideration today's technology.
No doubt about it.
In a meaningful way. And clearly you cannot just carte blanche anything goes with technology. So we have to draw a line.
that's exactly what his attorney said. He said the laws were archaic, and they built their case on the fact that he used a drone to locate the animal. If he had used the drone to locate the animal before it would have been shot, it would have been illegal.
I get that part.
Instead, he believed that the deer was dead, so he was within his rights. So.
Hey, let me get our guest
Please do.
introduced here because he may have a comment on
he
this.
will.
We might have blindsided him with that little.
Yeah.
So we've got Matt Morrett, who is.
Yes, sir.
He's a legend, and when we come back to talk to him about our subject, I'll get all of his credentials out of the way. But Matt is with the Pennsylvania State Wildlife. What do you guys go by up there, Matt?
Well, we're the Pennsylvania Game Commission. That's our state wildlife agency, here in Pennsylvania. And the cool thing about Pennsylvania, y'all did blindside me. The attorneys here are going to choke me if I talk about that too much. But that was a big case that just went down. And when you guys y'all talking about laws and everything, like one thing, I came from the hunting industry and still love it over there. And kind of my career has led me here, and we can talk about those reasons down the road. But one thing that it's hard as a hunter to understand is those laws are in place for a reason, and some of those laws have been around a long time. And the hard thing is those laws aren't always easy to change. That's the thing that, with technology sometimes is way out ahead of some of this stuff. And that's one example that happened, just, really recent news was that case with the drone for sure.
Well, it's interesting, and I think, I know the laws are written, and I believe the wardens have a little bit more of, and I use the term warden down here, have more of a responsibility to use their own judgment.
It's an interpretation.
The laws are probably not as defined as some people would want them because they are left up to interpretation. I think that's why they're called wardens in here instead of, I guess, law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Matt, the Pennsylvania commission up there, a lot of times when we have guests with your stature from a state, we get a kind of like a get out of jail free pass.
Or a free turkey in Pennsylvania. Something like that.
So we'll be looking for something along those lines from you before this is over with, Matt.
Bobby, I want no part of that, Bobby. You are on your own.
He's always looking for a turkey somewhere.
So anybody, whoever you send up here, send them to see Bobby.
I learned a long time ago that you just don't invite folks from Mississippi or Alabama to your turkey woods because y'all know how to get it done.
This is a wise man.
You know how to get it done.
Yeah, that's like me inviting my friends from Louisiana to come to the deer camp.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I was kind of interested in that meat weekend. You get a Yankee down there this time of year that hadn't hunted deer for a month.
Come
we
on,
can do some damage.
We got a target-rich environment.
And they've extended the Mississippi deer season with 2 days, but it's a weekend, so everybody in Mississippi gets an extra weekend. Mm-hmm. It always closes on the 31st of January, and this year's the 1st and 2nd, which is Saturday, Sunday coming up. And they've even asked us, and we kind of did almost a PSA for them, public service announcement, that they're asking everybody in the state of Mississippi to fill out and harvest all their limit for the year because they feel like that's the healthiest thing given the age we are in and the spread of CWD and the encroachment on, the pressure on habitat and loss of everything else considered. So I thought that's pretty cool to give us an extra weekend. And the other thing is I think the doe harvest is 5. And I believe that I'm right is you can harvest all 5 in one day if you want to.
Sure.
So
I think a tough time. We have a tough time up here too. Is getting those messages out about how important it is to harvest does. And it's one thing I've learned here. I've been at the Game Commission almost 6 years, and there's so much tradition. And one thing I've learned is the way to manage deer is totally different that I thought of when I wasn't sitting in this seat. And, you look at things a whole lot different and looking at the future. Mossy Oak's done a great job. You're one of the companies out there that understands it and looks at the future because when we're all going, somebody has to take the reins.
But it's also, I'm right back at you in the States because the ability to look at it holistically and not so granular. And every place, every county, every landowner has all these issues we're talking about, but you got to look at it in the entirety of the state and then laws governing and I thought about it a minute ago with the technology conversation and the lawsuit and whatever Lanny referenced. It seems like to me there's a couple of issues there that lead in all this. And number one is protect the resource. 100%. Protect the resource, the health and the abundance and the future of the resource trumps everything, including us getting to hunt or eat everything. So we all got to put that first. And with the laws and technology, when it encroaches on what's healthy for the resource, boom, hey, drop the hammer. But then the hard part is then you get to the ethics part. So where you draw a line on that, and what's not ethical in this state may be considered ethical here and ethical. That's a different conversation. That's a slippery slope. That's where hopefully putting the resource first, putting the critters and the habitat and the land and all the stuff we love first will lead to people just wanting to use the right ethics,
Yeah, I was with John Grutchy and Josh Nunley yesterday with MDWFP talking specifically about that. And it always reminded me because they were asking, have y'all shot does? Have y'all shot does? I'm like, oh, yeah, we've been wearing them out. But it reminded me that old adage is it's amazing how much conservation work you can do with a rifle. and that's that center of the bullseye. What we got going on right now.
Meat collection,
Meat
filling the
collection.
freezer.
So,
Come on down, Matt.
so Matt,
You don't have to ask me twice.
well, Matt, can you tell before we get into turkeys? Can you kind of give us a little overview of? I always thought Pennsylvania, you guys had as many or more hunters than most
Huge
other
license
states.
sales.
Yeah, you're like in the top 3 for sure.
Yeah.
You used to be
Yeah,
number one.
we're number 2 to Texas. We have just under 900,000 hunters in the state. And that's a whole other management side of things. When you look at that many people that get excited for 2 weeks of deer season, rifle season, and obviously a little longer with archery equipment, and what you said, Toxie's hitting the nail on the head. It's you got to look at the resource first. You got to look at future, and you got to look at where it's going. You mentioned CWD, and every state out there is facing it and trying to battle it. We don't know a whole lot about it, and what we do know is if you don't have a healthy herd, it can be rampant.
Yes.
And that's a big ask on a lot of deer hunters is to make sure that you shoot a doe. But yeah, we're still proud. Pennsylvania's, we're still proud of our heritage.
Oh gosh.
That hunting heritage is here. At one time we had over a million hunters, and we're just knocking at the door underneath that. And when you look at, our big show here in Harrisburg, and that is in the month of February, where we get 300,000 people to come through the doors in a 10-day show, and everybody that's in the hunting industry, everybody's products, outfitters and guides and food plots, no matter what, it's a one-stop shop. And that sports show at Harrisburg, the NRA show, is as big as hunting season is here. So we still have a lot of passion here in this state, and it's when you look at a state to be from, like myself, I'm proud to be from Pennsylvania.
How's the deer herd look up there?
Our deer herd is as strong as it's ever been. It really is. As a matter of fact, we're having trouble, in lots of areas with overpopulation, especially as the urban areas grow. We've got plenty of deer to hunt, and we're fortunate too in Pennsylvania here to have darn near 5 million acres of public hunting. Whether it's stuff awesome. That our agency owns, we own 1.5 million acres. The Game Commission, hunters' dollars have bought those lands, for hunting and for wildlife. And we have a sister agency, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, that has 2.5 million acres of public. We have national forest, and the deer hunting isn't as easy on those public grounds, obviously, because we share it with a lot of people, but there's plenty of deer there, and plenty of, whether you just want to shoot a deer or you want to hunt trophy bucks, they're there.
That probably leads to the amount of land available to the public there that didn't just happen last year. Y'all have a history of that, I'm assuming. And it probably leads to the reason why, even when I first started this like 40 years ago, there was more. Also, I started looking at numbers, which I had no idea at the time. There was more, I believe I'm right, there were more, and I thought the world revolved around the Southeast, because I grew up here. There was way more hunters or licensed hunters in the state of Pennsylvania than Mississippi and Alabama combined. And I think at one time it took Georgia together to come up to the number that was either Michigan or Pennsylvania, but at the time Pennsylvania was number one hunters. And I've just, one of our biggest things, our heart kind of bleeds for here a lot is just access for everybody that loves it. Mm-hmm. And then, a place to do it and do it right, appreciating it all. So hats off to Pennsylvania. And just the challenge I know is like providing a wide variety of opportunities to people, because in Mississippi and places I know now more and more they've got stuff that's wide open to everyone, but there's controls and draw for territories, and then they've all the way down to like some places intensively managed for big trophies. It's good as going on a high paid hunt somewhere, but it's a very limited draw, and I think the people that hunt public land love the fact that that's a chance they have. Myself. So anyway, rambling on that, I'm just kind of really cool to see a state and the ones that have so much public land available.
And I hope we keep it.
Yeah.
It's very
or add more.
Yep, that's right.
So, Lanny, Pennsylvania is an interesting state. They also have a football team in the Super Bowl. Could you tell us what team that would be?
The Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's coming up here soon.
Pennsylvania?
That's not Campbell's soup variety right there. That's actually a football game. Blaney.
Pennsylvania.
Has a team in the Super Bowl.
Oh, I know this. The Eagles.
Let freedom
The
ring.
Eagles, that's it. I got it. Yeah, I've heard So, what
So,
do you think I
for
am?
all our listeners, just so you
I thought
know,
it was the Steelers.
years ago, I was talking about a guy who was a friend of somebody's. I can't maybe Will Primos or somebody, but it's like he was a linebacker. I said he plays linebacker in the pros, and Landy goes, "Is that offense or defense?" And then something else came up.
Man,
and I said something about a quarterback. He's like, "Which side are they on?" So I knew that he wasn't a student of football.
Yeah.
When I found that out.
But I do want Philadelphia to win.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How about you? Who do you want to win, Bobby?
Who's the other team?
I'm not going to pick one either way.
Kansas City.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just caught a little bit of the controversy.
No,
that's going on.
I'm an Eagle. My son-in-law is a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so I'll
So you
end
gonna
up.
pull for the
Well,
Eagles?
We got a local guy, A.J. Brown from Starkville, Mississippi.
Sure
He's on
is.
the Eagles?
Yep,
He's
he's
a
on the
standout
Eagles.
wide receiver.
Oh, I knew that. That's right.
We also have a local guy from Houston, Mississippi that's on the Chiefs.
Yeah, he's kind of
Oh,
good.
Chris Brown.
Yeah.
So
he's
I was
super
looking
good.
that up the other day in these very small counties right here in rural Mississippi. We have one from Noxubee County, one from Octavio County, and one from Chickasaw County, all contiguous right around Westbourne here. And I think their combined salaries are over $100 million a year.
Wow. I heard
Three of the top paid players in the NFL are from right here in rural Mississippi, close by us.
I'll probably get this wrong, but I think at one point I understood that, not bragging on Mississippi anymore, that we had more professional
Per capita.
players.
Per capita. That's
Y'all,
right.
y'all go ahead and tell my story then. Per capita than
Well,
any
you
other
don't know
state.
anything about
Well, I mean,
football.
I said I did. Well, I'm glad y'all verified
Oh,
it
my
then.
gosh.
So wait, who are you gonna pick for the Super Bowl?
Probably Philly.
Philly?
You know what? I like them both. I've always liked them both. Even before now, I tend to like underdogs and stuff, but
do
I like
too.
them both. I'm gonna go. Whoever wins is who I'm for.
All right, can't lose there.
Well, Matt, we didn't bring you here to talk about the Super Bowl.
We know who you're pulling for.
Yeah, but
surely.
that's a
Well,
big deal.
Bobby, I figured you'd be a Swiftie.
Oh, he is a Swiftie.
No, I do like Taylor. She seems real like a nice young lady. But I'm not a Swiftie.
Yeah.
But I have a daughter that is, so I don't know about
Amen.
You might as well be.
You might as well be. So, Richie, who you pulling for?
Oh, the Eagles.
Eagles
'cause,
all the
yeah,
way.
I don't want the Chiefs to three-peat.
Me neither. There's your underdog.
Let's talk about, Matt, whenever we talk about turkey calling, invariably it bubbles up. We talk about these contests from time to time. Who are some of the better callers? And we hear these stories about you being the first guy to win the Grand Nationals with a friction call when everybody else was using a mouth call. We want to hear about that. But before we go there, tell us a little bit about you, how you came into the turkey hunting world and your kind of rise and how you got to be where you are now. But we want to learn about you.
Well, mine was a lot of luck. I'll be honest with you. I just at the right time. I'm very fortunate to my dad and was a turkey hunter around the area before anybody else was. I grew up in the 70s and people would come over and talk to my dad about turkeys, and I just kind of picked it up and it was in my blood. And when I was 6 years old, he said, let's go call in a contest somewhere. And he took me to the turkey calling contest at that big show I was talking about in Harrisburg. And it just got in my blood. And, my heroes growing up were all there. I mean, guys like, Ben Rogers Lee and Dick Kirby and Billy McCoy and just Harold and David. Everybody would come to Harrisburg, Preston Pittman. I can just go on. And that's who I looked up to when I was little. And that first contest, I didn't do very well, but it lit a fire to do it more. And at that time, there was a turkey calling contest every weekend in Pennsylvania. And from that time when I was 6, we would go to every one that we could that was close. And, I started doing better and learning a lot and getting out in the woods with my dad and hearing turkeys. And at that time, we actually had turkeys in the yard that we had in the pen, and I'd listen to them and try to mimic them all that I could. And when I was 16, we flew to Dallas, Texas to the first Super Bowl I went to, the first Grand Nationals. I was a junior and was very fortunate to win that contest, and it just kept growing, and I kept practicing and kept getting better and traveling more. And at that time, it opened my opportunities to work for a company. HS Strutt, Hunter Specialties, had called and offered me pretty much a job as a junior in high school to compete in contests and travel the country promoting their products and promoting turkey hunting and developing products. And I had a great career with HS for over 25 years of just doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, if the toilets need cleaned, I did that. And I moved to Iowa for 7 years of my life and was just involved in every aspect of that business. And, like a lot of those companies that Hunter Specialties sold, and during that time I was still competing and was fortunate to win, 5 World Friction Championships and a bunch of U.S. Open contests and obviously the Grand Nationals in 1990. That was my biggest feat. And like you said, there was, you had to do 6 calls and I did 3 on friction and 3 on air. And it was just my day. I beat a guy from over in Georgia named Joe Drake by 1 point. And that 1 point made me a living for a long time in that turkey hunting industry. And, when Hunter Specialties sold, I went over to a gentleman y'all familiar with, Mr. Fred Zink, and went to work for Zink Calls and Avinex Decoys working on their turkey line. It was very infant in 2012. And,
wow.
And we grew that turkey line pretty tremendously in, just 7 short years. And in 2019, I was hunting with one of my real good buddies in Oklahoma, and I was looking at Twitter one night, and this ad came on Twitter for the Pennsylvania Game Commission in the marketing division. And I was thinking, and something hit me hard that night. It's like, I've made 30 years of my living out here in this hunting industry, selling products and making products to help people kill deer and turkeys and whatever, and get them closer and just experience it. But, giving back might be a great way to finish my career in the conservation field, and being able to give back to the resource in this industry and hunting, and make sure that it's there when I'm long gone is something that I look forward to. And I never applied for a job in my life. And there was all this, a lot of the state stuff that I'm not used to. I applied for this job and didn't hear back for a while. And I happened to be back in Oklahoma again when they called me to come to work at the Game Commission and did a job interview over the telephone. And, we came to the agency here as a division of a couple people and have grown the marketing and strategic communications division to a bureau, which we have over 20 employees now. And, we have our own podcast and we do a lot of video production, a lot of the same stuff that I learned from the hunting industry. We brought into the agency where we can promote hunting and trapping, which is part of our mission for future generations. And it's pretty cool. It's exciting, especially to work in a state like here. And so many times your state agencies are misunderstood, especially, game wardens and all the stuff, the biology side, the laws. And we're just trying to lay that out there on the table to all of our sportsmen. Like you said earlier, Toxie, is to make sure that we have this statewide brush and put the resource first and understand why we do shoot deer and why we do shoot turkeys, and to make sure that resource is here for long beyond our times. But that's kind of a short story where I'm at. And I've got to spend so many great times with the greatest people on earth. And that's like when we show up at NWTF, that's like a family. I mean, there might be 70,000 people there, but you have this deep connection with each and every one of them. And that I wouldn't trade for the world.
Yeah. I'm the old timer in the industry type thing now, but what he's talking about is at the identical time we started the very beginning of Mossy Oak. He was right there from the very first day.
Like it was yesterday, Tox. I really do.
So I think, do you remember him having a convention in Birmingham?
Yeah, I do. I have a great story about Birmingham. It was 1979. My dad actually worked in Atlanta at that time. He would fly back and forth on the weekend. He was a surveyor and a bridge and highway designer when they were, when Atlanta was jumping. And in 1979, we were going to go to I was 9 years old. We were going to go to Grand Nationals in Birmingham that year. But the night before we left, my sister was born, and we had to fly home. And I'm still pissed off at her to this day that I missed Grand Nationals that year.
The grudge began.
That seems like one of the first ones we would have gone to would have been in '87.
Yeah, and that was in Birmingham.
That was in Birmingham.
And it was like in a little strip, like
it
an old abandoned.
It wasn't very big.
Old abandoned Kmart or something. It was like in a
I don't
little
even remember
strip
what it was. I just remember because we would have not even known how to navigate any of that one for Bob.
Yeah, that probably cost you another job offer.
Yeah.
So I was little at that time, but and that's the thing about turkey calling. Back in those days, 80s and 80s and 90s, the family of turkey callers, and you look at them today. You look at Mark Drury, and you look at Steve Stoltz and Michael Waddell, and you look at Walter Perry. You look at all these guys that turkey calling has grown their careers. I mean, Waddell's Elvis. I mean, I tell him that all the time. I mean, from turkey calling to where he's at today and what he's done for the hunting industry and all those guys. I mean, and laid a career for them because of a mouth call or a slate call. And it's pretty cool when you look back. And you even when you look at the roots of Mossy Oak, I mean, Toxie, I mean, you look at where it started. You put Mossy Oak and got people to wear Mossy Oak that were turkey hunters and turkey callers, and
that was where our
scaled
love
a business
was.
from
right. That was our first love, always has been. Although we love all of it, and but like you, is such a big similarity as I'm not saying my son's setting, but I'm over the hump of career in this. My mind is always family and critters. How can I get things ready for the future for them? How can I do things, just like the business we talk about all the time. It's like they'll tell you I'm like a broken record. I'm not even, is this going to make money this year? We're going to hit our budgets or whatever. It's like, is it long-term sustainable? Is what we're doing long-term sustainable? And it's the same thing with the wildlife too. And when you just listen to you talk about that, really hit home with me how important it is. Because one of my sayings I say again and again and again, and it hits home perfect today, is like, it's a blessing. It's nothing else you can call it. It is a blessing to live a life, and not you just talked about it or you whatever. You made a difference in something you really, really love. And, of course, for us, for you, the outdoors, wildlife, turkey hunting, all of this stuff, and the outdoor industry. And so to know you made a difference in here, with as far as the growth and the popularity and, this explosion with the whole Gamekeeper piece, is that's what it is. It's just that pure love for the resource and trying to make a difference,
Yeah, well, I loved his comment about he thought at this stage of my career, why don't I go back and give back to the resource?
Yes,
That's good
100%.
stuff.
Well, you've always
and
been
wisdom.
giving back, but this is a really quantum leap step up in the
Oh, for
ability
sure.
to give back.
I was going to say we can do it all in our own way,
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where that's our state capital, and our game commission building is I've driven by it 1,000 times, probably more than that in my lifetime, and I've never stopped in to say hi or what are y'all doing. And I listen to everybody else tell me what they're doing, and I'm mad about that. And I lived in Iowa for a long time, spent half my life in the South promoting, and I didn't make those relationships that I personally should have made a long time before that in my life. So I understood what hunting was all about and why we do it. And, we just did our own podcast this morning with two gentlemen. One of them is one of our foresters, and all of our game lands have their own crews that do these timber projects and, creating habitat. And this is a 25-year-old young man that just listening to him for 45 minutes, anybody can learn about. They're like, we don't realize what deer eat. We think they eat whatever we're planting out there, and that's only part of it. And those kind of things that you learn every day. I learn something every day that I'm here at headquarters about some aspect, and a lot of those aspects, because I do still have blood squirting out of my eyes and like to chase things. A lot of those aspects help you become a better hunter, a better outdoorsman. And when you become a good listener, that's when I think maybe that's birthdays and I'm old now. I'm mid-50s. I learn more at every conversation, no matter who it's with.
Well, that's funny when your podcast guest around the time she was born, there was a lot of turmoil in PA. It seems like there wasn't a whole lot of timber management going on. There was deer everywhere. They had just introduced all these antler restrictions, which I think Mississippi kind of dropped antler restrictions at the same time. So he's witnessed a lot of change for the better.
They really have. They don't, and I was in that bandwagon too. That like when they said antler restrictions and shooting all these does, when I think about when I was that age, I'm like, man, they're going to kill everything. But when we look at the products today, our antler size has definitely grown, and antler restriction wasn't put in place. Antler restriction was just one tool. The biggest tool that they were trying to do was to lower the deer herd and to get the habitat better. So our deer herd was stronger, our animals were healthier, and that's why we're here at this agency. That's why we have a marketing and strategic communications bureau, or to get those messages out so people can hear it from us and not make their own assumptions of what's going on. And we still have that tradition here. We have sides that don't agree with us, and like in life, we can always have a disagreement on something, but we have to be able to talk to each other to work for a common goal.
Yeah. Well, that drastic change worked. It really did.
It did. And if you look at today on our deer herd, like our numbers are getting back to that time that they implemented those changes, and it affects our habitats quite a bit. And it's all coming full circle again.
Yeah. I think a lot of those people that, may have been complaining back in the day are very thankful for those changes.
Absolutely.
So, Matt, a lot of these states here in the South, we restocked deer in the 50s and 60s and maybe even the 70s. Did Pennsylvania, did y'all just always have deer up there, or did y'all have to do some restocking as well?
They did. They brought some deer in. I don't know the time frame, and I should know that stuff. But there was a time when the only places there were whitetails were in the northern counties, in the mountains. I remember my granddad telling me stories when, down around here, when they saw a deer track in the wintertime, like the whole town came to look at it because it was like seeing a dinosaur.
Very familiar story.
I told that same story about a week ago.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
That happened.
Yeah,
here.
my dad said you got on it and went and found it.
No, I can show you. I can show you deer tracks in my front flower bed now.
There's probably some out here in the parking lot. Yeah.
My buddy out in Oklahoma that I hunt with, he's 47, and he remembers when that he saw his first deer in his lifetime. And now you look at Oklahoma, and their population's over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure
that's I thought about it. I made a note to talk about it before we got through. Is that the whitetail, above all, probably everything we care about, is so adaptable. So we put more hunting pressure on them. They're going to go nocturnal. They're going to move in, and they've learned to really become suburban. They don't get the hunting pressure, obviously, but then there's an abundance of food there. That transformation, even in our small town, has happened in the last 5-6 years to where it's just every day. And I know that's commonplace all over the country, but ours didn't used to be like that. Yeah. And I think maybe the hunting pressure had them a little more shy, but now it's like every day. I mean, I can't grow stuff around the house anymore. There's just so many deer.
You go to big cities, it's crazy, like Philadelphia.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you be in concrete jungle and you look over and there's a giant buck standing in someone's backyard, and they have adapted. And when you think about whitetails, and I know we want to talk about turkeys, but you think about whitetail deer, you think about conservation, you think about everything that's happening. If it wasn't for whitetail deer, I mean, they are the pinnacle. I mean, they fund conservation.
They do. There's so many more deer hunters. And the thing about the turkeys in contrast is they are not as adaptable as deer. I mean, nature always adapts in some way, let's face it. But they aren't as adaptable, and they have a lot of headwinds. That's one of our top priorities here, is to help understand it, help give people the tools to do things about it, and above any of that, to help fund the research projects that are teaching us what's really going on.
Well, that's one thing that Mossy Oak, you can't say enough when you look at companies that are out there that get it, and when you're giving back like y'all do, my hat's off to y'all, and Sportsman's hat should be off to y'all as well, because that big picture is a big picture. Without animals to chase and critters to chase, the hunting industry would be a tough place. And when you look at some of the funding to wildlife agencies and research and all that, a lot of people don't realize this, but every gun, every bullet, every bow, every arrow, our forefathers were smart enough to put that excise tax on there that comes back directly to fund conservation. We're lucky here in Pennsylvania. We also have a really strong natural resource called natural gas that is helping right now. I mean, but without natural gas, those Pittman Robertson dollars, and that's from target shooters, it doesn't matter what, would be and is for a lot of agencies. That's a lot of their funding that they get these projects done, and it's so important. And we can thank our lucky stars that somebody was ahead of that back in the day in the 30s to establish that. And that's one of the reasons that we all have deer and turkeys and quail and rabbits to hunt, is because of that.
pretty incredible.
It is, and it's to build on that, just to say, people have heard me say it a bunch now. I'm gonna be a broken record, but that the big step in the quantum leap we want to see keep taking place and is taking place, and we push really hard is like, don't just like quit listening to this and you leave it to Matt Morrett in the state of Pennsylvania or the government or big funding conservation name brand people or whatever. It's like the battle is to live a life that way. It's like every single small person, every person who's got 4 acres or 400, it doesn't matter. Someone just like whatever is tending to stuff in their backyard is caring for a piece of ground.
Right.
And that's how we win the battle by, and of course, what it takes is the states and the federals to give us a roadmap to do that, of what's going on. And obviously, without rules and regulations, we have nothing. Mm-hmm. But and then, we see more and more people are becoming so passionate about it once they taste that it's become more important to them than killing stuff. And I it's funny, when we first started, I got interviewed for this thing, like, what's your whitetail strategy? How do you pattern whitetails? And, and I was like, and I said this, and I love simple things, simple wisdom. I got stuff written down. I save it in my phone. I write it, somewhere and forget where I put it. But I love the simple sayings. And I looked at the guy. It was like a panel at a store, it was supposed to be these guest expert guys. And I was like, I'm not an expert. I just say what I know. But he said, what's your top tactic for whitetails? And I went, kind of occurs to me like, if he ain't there, you can't kill him. And I was like, the guy looked at me like I had a third eye or something. What do you mean? I was like, we didn't have cameras or any of that stuff. It's like, but if you're chasing a trophy deer and there's not one there, it seems like to me that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a part of being a gamekeeper that's just doing the right thing. That's holistic. That's everything to do with making your place better and healthy. But then there's a selfish side. We're trying to grow trophy deer. Hey, nothing wrong with that either.
Right.
It drives good behavior for people managing their place.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Hey, Lanny.
Hey, Bobby.
Have you ever wondered if your feeder went off? Or if it's even got corn in it?
Yeah, you sit there at night wondering about it.
Moultrie has solved this. This is some high-tech stuff.
Fits on any feeder that helps monitor the level of feed and lets you know if it went off or not. And you can remotely control it.
Can I look at your feeder if we're on the hub?
I really hope not, but we're going to have to talk to the guys at Moultrie about that. This is the biggest thing in feeders since corn.
That's saying a lot.
With Feed Hub, there's no more stressing, no more guessing. This technology allows you to remotely monitor your feeders.
We always say feed safely, do it the right way.
No doubt about it.
To learn more about it, visit moultrieproducts.com/feedhub. It's a great invention.
Unbelievable technology and products brought to us by our buddies at Moultrie. Nosler is known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
All right, Mac. I'm going to kind of steer this thing back toward turkeys just a little
All right,
bit.
sorry about that.
The school,
Not a problem.
No, we
the
like
school
talking
teacher
about it
invited
all.
me.
We do. We do. We got a lot. Are you drinking a beer there, Matt? What is it?
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, we can do that on the state dime. That's straight Diet Coke. Sorry, I needed a drink.
Okay.
Coca-Cola.
So I think back to, and I bet you go a long way back if you started calling at 6, but think back and tell us one of maybe your first turkey or one that really stands out to you. Could you tell us that story?
Well, I got lots of them, and I have a terrible memory on a lot of things, but I can remember just about everything. My first turkey was definitely a standout story. And it really wasn't my first turkey. So in Pennsylvania, when I came up, you couldn't hunt till you were 12. And, I had a Red Ryder at my house and that was my dad's, and I still have it today, that things that came in the yard, I probably shouldn't say this working where I work now, but they were in trouble. I couldn't wait to go hunting. And fall turkey hunting was so big back then. Our archery deer season ended the 31st of October. And, you couldn't deer hunt. So deer hunting was not nearly as big, especially the archery season back then, but fall turkey season was really big. Anyway, long story short, I couldn't wait to go when I was 12, and that I had been calling a bunch, and it was like the last day of fall turkey season, and we busted up some turkeys, got them scattered, and my dad and I were together, and you're different kind of mentorship back then. My dad had a gun, and he was just ready to kill a turkey as much as I was. Long story short, we busted turkeys up and called one in finally, and when you break them up, a lot of times they fly up in trees, and this turkey came in flying and was going to land right in front of us. And before that turkey hit the ground, my dad just torched him. And I looked at him and I'm like, that was my turkey. And he goes, first lesson, never let him hit the ground. So, I remember that like it was yesterday. But one of my most favorite ones really was my first gobbler that I was able to take by myself. And I couldn't even drive yet. A buddy drove me to a place and knew there were some turkeys in there, and we went different ways. And I called one up. I was 14 and called one up and shot it by myself. And it was pretty cool to bring that one home and see my dad smile. My dad's been a big supporter. He used to travel to all the contests. I'm sure Toxie remembers my dad coming to the contests and stuff.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for him putting that in my blood, I wouldn't be here today, because, we all, like y'all, we live at 24/7, 365.
Wow. Dudley, you got a question?
I kind of want to get into some of the things you do in the woods and learn more about you. So really broad question, but where would you group yourself as far as turkey hunting styles? Are you a little more aggressive, or you kind of know what I'm asking here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll be honest with you, and against the grain a little bit to a lot of thought out there, I'm a turkey caller. I love to call turkeys. If I couldn't call them and hunt them, I probably wouldn't hunt them, because I like to talk to them, and I rely a lot on that. And I am aggressive at times, and I'm laid back at times. When we were filming from start of turkey season in the South to the end in Maine, what that has taught me is to be more patient. If that turkey's in the game and he's answering me, I'm going to stick with him. But I love that calling aspect, that one-on-one and talking to him, and that's really my style. I try to outsmart him that way, and I'm not saying that you can call in every turkey out there, because you can't. Mm-hmm. And then you got to get on the move and get closer and do all that stuff. But I'm always in the game with them, and patience, I think, is something that we've all gotten away from at times. And those video cameras will teach you to be patient, because they're hard to set up. And most of the turkeys that I would have made a move on without filming them end up coming out there in front of you at 25 yards at some point. And I think if I put myself in that spot, I'm a lot more patient today and rely on my calling way more than most people do. And I think you take any turkey caller out there, that's what they like, to outsmart them. They want to sound just like a hen out there. And I've always trying to perfect my skill. I want to sound just like a hen if I can, the best that I can. And like was said earlier, with technology where it's at today, anybody can go out there and sound like a hen turkey. I mean, these box calls and slate calls and even mouth calls have come so far in the last 20 years, and the information that's out there. You can get on YouTube and search so many things that are going to take you into a hunt and teach you what other people are doing. I don't think there's any magic bullet. If there was, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
No,
it's that challenge of saying the right thing at the right time.
I think that's why there's so many of us, and growing so strong is just the diversity in how we hunt, and what really sets us off.
So Matt, walk us through what would go through your mind. How would you? So if you've got a roosted bird and you go in there to him, and you can get within a couple of 100 yards, without spooking him. How are you going to let the morning unfold? What are you going to start off doing? And just kind of walk us through some of those scenarios.
Okay. Well, where I grew up, obviously we not only have almost 1 million deer hunters, we have 250, 300,000 turkey hunters. So, it's a tough place to hunt, and our turkeys get pressured pretty much, and I'm still on that shy side. I let him know where I'm at, a little bit of tree calling, a little bit of soft stuff. If he answers me back, a lot of times I don't say a whole lot to him right away because I don't want him to gobble his brains out. I learned a long time ago, the more he gobbles, the more he attracts hens, the more hens go to him, the more people might hear him, and so on and so forth. I always have that in my back pocket, but it's crazy. I say that right now, but the first time I sit on a turkey that's gobbling, something makes me almost an idiot out there because I lose all those senses, and sometimes I call to him too much. But most of the time, I'm just letting him know where I'm at and kind of stay low. If he's gobbling at me, tree calling, I don't have to get more excited to him. And, basically that's where I start. I just start just like they do every morning. They talk a lot to each other on the tree. And, a lot of times it's just that soft, subtle stuff. Sometimes we don't even hear it. It's so soft.
Going to all these contests and to the conventions and stuff, we hear guys just yelping so loud and all that. I just always wonder when they get in the woods, are they yelping like that? And you kind of answered that question, trying to be a little softer there.
There's definitely a time and a place for that stuff, and I think we're the folks that are really good at calling turkeys up. I think the biggest thing that one of the biggest advantages they have is they can make a turkey gobble when a lot of people can't, and through that loud, aggressive stuff, and maybe it's only a shot gobble, but they're getting, Eddie Salter, who's, your next door neighbor over there. He's one of the best in the country at getting a turkey to gobble. He's relentless, but he just it's that he sounds like a hen. He knows when to get excited and when to soften down. And I think that's, one of the other things I've got to do is spend a lot of time in the woods with guys and girls that are great turkey hunters, and I learn from them. But, I think there's definitely time and a place for that excited stuff, and that stuff's fun. It's like getting in a car. You're either going to get in a Corvette or you're going to get in a Jeep. They both have their pluses and minuses, but when you get in a Corvette, you're going to mash the pedal to the floor, and that's what that loud, aggressive cutting and yelping does for you. And today, with like we were talking about the custom turkey calls, with some of these box calls that are out there, that thing sounds like a hen already. It's built into it. I mean, you run the lid across the box and feathers should come out of it, and you can get soft on that stuff. But always, I think a good rule to play is if he's answering that soft stuff, there's no reason to get more excited and more aggressive, because if you get him excited out there at 150 yards, good chance he's not going to come see you. He's going to hang up out there and start spitting and drumming, and those hens are, he's used to those hens going to him. We're trying to get in his head and change his mind to get him come pay us a visit, and that's where that soft stuff really is. If I can tell any turkey hunter that's learn how to tree call and soft yelping and soft clucking, you'll call way more turkeys up with that than that aggressive stuff. And it's not that aggressive stuff doesn't work. It's that aggressive stuff keeps them out there at bay, keeps them excited, gets them cranked up when they're out of range.
Bobby's smiling, looking at me. Excuse me. But, I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything he just said, honestly. And I'd be stupid if I disagree with someone like him, as he's forgotten more than most people ever know. But in my learning, too, whatever, aggressive calling is so much more effective as a tool when you haven't already been constantly over-yepping already. And I know some people just stake their claim on being, whatever, aggressive and loud and hammer down and all that, but it just seems to me a lot more effective when you have been pretty soft. And there's all of a sudden change in the kind of the excitement level. It's more effective, in my opinion, than if it's just something you do all the time.
I agree 100% with that. I mean, there is definitely pros and cons on both sides of that coin, but that aggressive stuff, I mean, there's turkeys that we've all called that we were out of air and blew the reed out of a mouth call because we called to it so much. And I love those just as much as those ones that I always like to know where they're at. That's the thing. That's if a turkey didn't gobble, none of us would be here talking about it, because it throws that adrenaline through your body that you can't control.
Oh, it's so tempting, even when I know I'm better off to play the quiet game is so tempting to check them.
Oh yeah.
You know, how many times have you said that hunting with somebody?
Just check him.
Hey, you need to check them. You know, we don't know what to do right now.
wonder where
we
he
need
is.
to check them. You know?
Well, and it's great when you hunt with somebody and one's doing that and they're going, hey, see where he's at. And when you got a blister on your tongue from calling to this thing too much, and you know you shouldn't, but you do it anyway.
So yeah, you know, I've said this on here before, and then just throwing things out that I've tried that it sure seems to work is also, if you haven't been loud and aggressive already and you're really soft, if a turkey is cutting you off, is like, I cut back at him like right on top of his gobble almost. And I don't know, in my mind, I have no idea if it's true. I may be crazy, but it's like I'm saying, heck yeah, you know, I'm fired up about you too. And, you know, it works a lot of times.
Well, you're getting in his head, I think. You know,
I cut right back at him, just like he gobbled at me.
Yep.
I'm cutting right back at him that second. You know,
we're lucky to be at the top of the food chain where we can have the ability to reason and all the stuff that we can as humans. And you know, you would think if you were talking to somebody and they answered you right back, especially back when we were probably at dating age or in high school, and you were trying to have a conversation with a girl and she seemed interested, man, that just builds you up. And that's kind of what we're doing out there. I mean, he thinks he's coming over there on a date. You've changed that mojo in his head. He's like, I got to see this girl. And that's what he's doing. And when you do that, you know, when she yells right back at you and says something kind of sexy, you're dang right, it has to get in their head.
Yep.
Landy, you got a turkey hunting question to ask him?
I do not right now, but I will in just a second.
Yeah, well, I got one.
Okay,
So
good.
Yeah. Boy, you made me forget my question.
That's birthdays.
Yeah, so I guess. Well, if you were around this group of guys, you'd understand what's going on here all the time. But so in the spring of the year, I'm fascinated. I can't course drumming. I can't. And we have these great turkey hunters like yourself on here, and we always ask, do you have any secret or a trick to trying to figure out if you hear drumming, where it's coming from?
If I hear drumming, I'm getting tied up on that shotgun because he's close enough that I should be able to see him. So I'm at a disadvantage a little bit my whole life. I've got some hearing damage from when I was a kid. I've had tubes in my ears about 11 times, even as an adult. So I have some hearing disabilities a little bit, if you will. And direction's tough for me. Drumming is one of those sounds that I hear really well because it's so low frequency, but I don't have any tips. I usually, you know, I guess it's just from being around so many years and time in the woods that when I have a really good sense of picking that direction, my eyes lock into it. But I mean, I haven't tried any of the hearing devices or anything like that, but direction has been pretty easy for me just because really I'm trying to overcome a little bit of a hearing loss that I have.
It sounds like you're, when you do hear something like that, you just buckle down, tuck yourself into the tree a little more and try not to move. I'd be willing to bet a lot of hunters are getting seen.
Oh, yeah.
And not realizing it. Mm. They'll hear a noise and jerk their head.
Especially
if I
early
can't
season.
locate him, I'd probably not be smart, but it shuts me down because if I can hear it and I feel like he's fairly close, if I can't locate him, I'm scared to death that I would call and he's like can see where I am, and that I'm just so paranoid about that. So I kind of lock down completely. I mean, I just freeze.
And being confident probably helps a lot because the more confident you are, the more willing you are to sit there dead still and wait for that noise to tell you where it is.
Sure.
That's all the more reason the setup means everything. Because if
Absolutely.
you have a faulty setup, you're nervous as a long-tailed cat in a rocking chair factory, Yeah. And if you got a really good setup where you're hit good and everything, then you can just kind of breathe easy.
Yeah.
You think about drumming though. Drumming is a call, a vocalization, or whatever it is, that is really underrated. I mean, I think turkeys, gobblers attract more hens by drumming than we ever give them credit for.
I agree.
And you think about the situation they're in, and this is totally anecdotal. There's no biological facts about this at all. But, you think about areas now, look at predator populations, a gobbler is more susceptible to predation in the springtime. Well, why is that? Because he's letting people know where he's at. where that drumming is a sound that's really pretty intimate. Hens can hear it for how, they can hear it from a long ways off, but that sound, is just as much of an attraction to hens and turkeys together than a gobble is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I catch myself listening for it all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's so, I don't know what the right word is, magical. It's enchanting or something because it's so mysterious. I mean, even if you're sitting there looking at one at 10 yards, pull it off, I'm not sure that they know 100% what creates the sound fully right now. Even biologists and stuff. It's such a mystical, whatever type of sound.
And it's funny, I'd say 50% of the time I think I hear a drum. It may not even be a drum. It may be a 18-wheeler accelerating.
That's right.
But
exactly.
Hey, if it gets me confident, that's all I need. It'll make me sit there longer.
If it puckers you up and makes you stay still, it worked.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
What you got, Lanny?
So you've been like us, been fortunate to probably hunt a lot of places. And we ask this a lot of the guys that are really into turkey hunting. If you were to, say of all the places you've hunted, where the toughest birds were, what would you think that would be?
Well, I would say 2 places in the country, and you're sitting in one of them, and I'm sitting in one of them. That Alabama, Mississippi area, and up here in the Northeast, and by far are the toughest turkeys, if you will. The turkeys that probably get hunted the most, or have had deep-rooted hunting seasons and pressure, and I mean, any of those animals, I mean, just like deer, it doesn't matter what it is, you put pressure on them, they learn to live with that pressure, learn how to get around you, and you got to have your lunch packed in both of those places. As far as turkeys go, there's always pockets where, you blind squirrel finds an acorn once in a while.
That's right.
But you can have one that runs you over. I mean, it happens everywhere. But I think we're coming from 2 of the toughest places right now today that it is to call up and get a turkey in at the end of your boots. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
Well, what about at the other end of the spectrum? What are some of the places or states that you've traveled to that are just magical that you're like, oh, if I get an invitation to go there, I have got to go?
Any of them. I'm open for that. No.
Yeah, point taken.
Probably my favorite places, that I've been, I still love to come down your way. I mean, Alabama, I spend a lot of time there. That's a magical place just because of that tradition. I mean, you think about Alabama's, I mean, if you're a turkey hunter and haven't been to Alabama, you're missing it. And I love Oklahoma. Oklahoma is one of my favorite places in the world, and it's totally different for different reasons. And, you get to the Rocky Mountains where the Merriams, I mean, I love it all, but the Alabama, Oklahoma, and here in the Northeast, Pennsylvania, New York, and up through New England, they're pretty special. And I'm not trying to, leave out the Midwest. I mean, it's my first trip to Missouri. I thought I died and went to heaven, in the late 80s. It's hard to say. I don't really have a favorite. I love them all for different reasons.
Speaking of Oklahoma, have you talked to our buddy Blake lately?
Oh man, he's hand up like nobody's business. I mean, he got him a new wife, and I have. I talked to Blake, still quite a bit, and he's still hard at it. He's still, you talk about a gamekeeper. There's a guy that, and I know Bobby's we tried to get him on the podcast. He's just hard to track down, but he's definitely one of us. And every day that he can, he's out there with his boots dirty and his hands dirty, just trying to make his wildlife habitat better.
No doubt. He's the real deal.
Oh,
that's for sure.
He is for sure the real deal. I know he's got to at least be happy that for all these years, because of the boys, he's had to skip almost the whole turkey season. I can remember stories where he'd flying red-eyed overnight to meet you there to go turkey hunting when he's only got a few days in the season left. Well, this year he can chill out and enjoy the whole year probably.
Yeah, he's kind of semi-retired. He's not retired because he's still out on tour and doing all that stuff. But, a lot of people look at his life and a lot of artists' life, and they think, man, this would be the greatest thing to live, man. Nobody would want that lifestyle. I mean, it's a demand. Like he's had a demand since he was in his 20s. I mean, he's out there digging it every day, and you can't go anywhere and somebody doesn't run your doors down, and he's going to enjoy retirement for sure.
Good for him.
Or semi-retirement. That's not really retirement. I shouldn't say it like that.
Well, he'll do everything on his terms, and he's earned that right like as much as anybody ever walked.
I've always been impressed by the way he manages his properties and his love and care of wildlife.
I heard this on somebody's, maybe the news or a podcast, but they were talking about people, and they were talking about, let's just face it, whatever, success or fame or wealth, all those things. And it's like, it doesn't change people. It just makes them become who they really are more. Mm-hmm. And so this better than we ever know because y'all are so close. But he'd rather, like you said, get his hands dirty, do the work as far everything to do with farming. I won't even say all the things he wants to do on it, but working on his place, doing the actual work himself, and kinder and more considerate, and all those things. If it says you'll become your true self, well, that just proves what a good person he was at heart. Because all this fame, him before all of that, and actually we knew him here because he was here the first Catch a Dream. Mm-hmm. Came here, Tracy Bird brought this guy nobody heard of, Blake Shelton, and he sang out here at Waverly at our golf course that time, and he's only become better and more generous and more thoughtful. It's pretty cool to see that fame has actually just been given to someone that deserved it, I guess is my point to say that.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
That is a good point. So, Matt, I asked you about your first turkey, and I'm assuming you've killed turkeys in a bunch of states. Mm-hmm. I know you have. But can you think back to one hunt that was just like, that really stands out in your mind? We love hearing good hunting stories, and I bet you got a bunch of them. But is there one that jumps out in your mind that you could tell us?
There's tons of them. I'll tell you one of them. Yeah, one of the last turkeys and my dad is still here. He'll be 84 years old here in a couple months, and
that's so awesome.
And a couple of years ago, I had found some turkeys not too far from his house, and it was about the time I went to work for Zink and Fred, and he never really believed in decoys at that time, and long story short, we got in the middle of them, and turkeys gobbling everywhere, and finally I had put a decoy out there about 15 yards. I wanted him to see how we were doing it, trying to get those things close. And, when they were drumming, you could feel it in the little hairs on your eyebrows. Long story short, a whole bunch of them started coming at once, and they were coming from different directions. And the first one that showed up, when it hit 40 yards, he just torched it. And I'm like, Dad, why didn't you wait? He goes, that's not the school I came from. When I see them and get a shot, they're dead. And I never got to really see how those decoys worked, and that one sticks out a lot to me. There's a ton of them that stick out. There was an old gobbler one time in Missouri, Hunter Specialties. We had a farm that we would bring people in, riders and buyers, and we entertained all spring. And there was an old gobbler down there that he kind of became a legend, and it was one you didn't want to mess with because it was one of like those Eddie Salter camp turkeys that. It would always be the first one to gobble, but, Eddie hunted it for 3 years, and this turkey you couldn't call up. It's just one of those ones that you'd send people on that you didn't like. And there was a turkey like that, and there was a turkey we had like that for a couple of years in Missouri, and finally outsmarted him. It was just his day, and as far as they go, like they're all pretty special to me, and every one of them has a great memory, and I have some really good stories about, a gentleman that's pretty special to me that's no longer with us. It was a Mossy Oak employee, Tim Anderson.
Oh, yeah. He loved you.
I can't probably tell those on air because, the first time that Tim Anderson ate collard greens and okra, it was not a good experience for Tim. But, rest his soul, and one of the reasons that Mossy Oak's so special to me, Tim Anderson I was there the first day he got hired at Hunter Specialties, and obviously worked together with y'all through his career at Mossy Oak, and I got to spend a couple days and killed some turkeys with Tim that are pretty special to me as well.
Yeah. He was such a special spirit.
Yeah.
Man. We missed him so bad.
He bled Mossy Oak, I promise you that.
He did.
He was a hoot.
Oh, he was. It still hurts so bad.
Yeah, it does.
But he did leave such a legacy of love. there's still people can't even talk about it when you bring his name up. Norman.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
they were like
that's right.
soulmates. So
Yeah.
appreciate you calling him out, because
Yeah.
I forgot y'all had worked together and were so
Yeah.
close.
Well, Norman and him were so close that they would fight like brothers when I've
Oh
been around.
gosh, they were like a stand-up comedy act. The
Exactly.
two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, Tim, in Tim's honor, a lot of you might not know this, but Tim's uncle is a gentleman named Dan Gable. And Dan Gable is a probably one of the most decorated college wrestling coaches at USA. I mean, just a true pioneer and legend. Well, Iowa wrestles Penn State here on Friday night here in State College, and our coach at Penn State, obviously came from the same college that Dan Gable did, and it's the highlight match of the year. So wrestling is really big in Pennsylvania. When Kev came to State College, I mean, those two teams, they're 1 and 2. So in Tim's honor, I try to get to that match when it happens here, because I'm the only Iowa fan here in Pennsylvania.
Oh, he had Coach Gable come speak here.
Sure.
Oh, wow.
To the pro staff guys and whatever. I mean, I'm telling you, they were ready to go run through a brick wall when he got through talking to them.
I don't think I've ever met a person, I'm speaking about Tim, who was more a bigger fan of a particular college team.
Oh, no. That's big time.
Yeah.
No.
There's only a couple things you can do in Iowa in the off season, because I live there. So if you weren't an Iowa fan, you probably were getting into some bad trouble in one way or the other.
There you go. Okay.
About that.
He was a Hawkeye through and through.
So Matt, tell us a little bit about like what's in your vest and what, but not you and I are kind of the same. We can both run a mouth call, but some of these other guys,
Bobby, don't even compare yourself.
They might.
You just started yelping last week.
Come on, Bobby.
Yeah, look, I can't get enough saliva. I get so nervous. But are you using a lot of different calls, or do you just kind of stick with a mouth call through the?
No, I do. I carry a variety. I'm pretty partial to slate calls too. We have and I know he's real good friends with Masioka. My neighbor right up the street, not too far away, is Mr. Bill Ziering.
Oh yeah.
How about that?
No matter what company I work for, where I've been, I've always been a big Cody fan. I actually bought a Cody call before they even hit the market. They were selling them at a local sporting goods store down here in the 80s. And, I carry a good slate call no matter every day of the year. I think sometimes it's hard to tell a difference between a good slate like a Cody and a real hen, with a little bit of practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. You get 50 yards away from a good slate call. I carry a box call. I rely on those a lot. And today, technology, not that a Lynch call wasn't good. And there's a lot of dead turkeys, probably more dead turkeys in history from a Lynch box call than any call ever made, because everybody had one and they were good. But today's technology is unbelievable. Some of these custom box calls. So I got a good slate, a good glass, a box call at all times. I carry a tube call. There's times when I use a tube a lot. I think a tube is very realistic, and 4 or 5 mouth calls all the time. And I always try to have different sounds. Not every hen's the same. I mean, you listen to 4 or 5 hens yelping together, they all have different voices. And there's been many times when, you're working a turkey, you're trying to get a turkey to gobble, you put a mouth call in, or you hit your box call, and all of a sudden it sparks something. It's a hen that gobbler's probably heard before. And if I hear a hen yelping, I'm trying to sound like her, because that gobbler knows her voice, just like we know people's voices out there. And I'm always trying to change the game. So different devices. My vest is I'm not saying I look like Walmart going out through the woods, but I got a couple calls in there.
It's fun too. But I will say too, it seems to help. In my mind, it was like, so if I call, and I'm predominantly a mouth call person most of the time, but I love a slate, I love a box. But what I was getting at is like, so you've made contact with one or whatever, and it's, the first thing is, if he's just barreling to you, well, look a gift horse in the mouth, don't overdo it. Just be patient. You're probably going to kill him anyway. But if it becomes like a calling match, I like to have the slate and the box, especially. I'll even pull out a push button sometimes. But my thing is, I want to be sure they sound different. So there's just a turkey. There's not like a human out there. And so I'm sounding like as many different hens as I can, so he has the impression there's more than one hen there. I think that helps a lot when you use different sounding calls together, like, there's different hens there, in my own opinion. Now, if turkey's got a bunch of hens, turkey's already going to be hard to deal with. He's really old or smart or whatever. I mean, it may not change any of that. But all things considered, I think it does help your odds when you can sound like a couple of different turkeys out there.
Yeah, I think it's worked decently for you over the years.
Yeah. I mean,
we have a resident of Pennsylvania that I'm pretty proud of. He's a fellow past Grand National champion, Denny Gulvis. And, when you talk to Denny for an hour, it'll change your life when it comes to turkeys. I mean, he's retired now. He spends every single day of his life recording turkeys, and he was underneath some this morning, I guarantee you, because he wants to know what they're saying to each other. I mean, there's nobody out there that has studied the turkey's language and what they say and how they say it more than that man right there. And anytime I get to talk to him about that, I'm all ears, because I mean, he's got thousands and thousands of hours recorded of he doesn't even care about gobblers. I mean, he cares less about. He hasn't killed a turkey since the I think the early '80s. He vowed to the man upstairs that like this will be his last one. And
wow.
And I don't want to speak for him, but man, he is unbelievable. And at some point on Gamekeeper, he'd be a great podcast, because like he'll blow your mind.
Yeah. I wrote his name down as soon as you said it.
He's such a legend.
Yeah. So Matt, going back to your slate call, have you got a trick or a tip to help us find, if we buy a new one, to find that sweet spot in it?
That's a great question, and I don't. I just play it a lot, and to try to find it. Everybody's different. There's no magic bullet to say this is the sweet spot, because everybody breaks that call. And I apologize. I just didn't bring any to work. That's terrible. I mean, not to have a turkey call with me, but I just play that call around 360 degrees around that call till I find a place that matches up perfectly. I try different strikers. I'm kind of that person that plays that call more on the edge. And, when I'll tell you this, and I'm going back to that Cody call, the thing that got me the most about Cody in the 80s, when I first picked one up, is how it thumped my ears. Mm-hmm. And, and when it thumped my ears, I knew it was doing something. And that call has a definite break from that high to low, just like when I hear that hen out there. And when it was thumping my ears, there was a time here when nobody had one of those calls. Obviously, when Cody hit the market, everybody has one now. But there was a time when that call would get responses when other calls wouldn't. And I'm not saying that's what it was or that's what it is, but I would say that the realism that's built into that friction call, and today's manufacturers everybody that's building them is building a great call. But I just spending a lot of time with that call, and practicing. I can't say enough about that. We get excited. Y'all are a little more excited than we are, because we still have snow on the ground up here. But I was up at daylight this morning, and the little birds are starting to sing. And daylight hours are getting longer. And I dug my calls out of the freezer. I keep them in the freezer in the off season and resupply this spring. But I started yelping a little bit, and I practice from now till turkey season. Wow. And if I was calling in competition still, I'd be practicing 24/7, 365 if I could. But I'm gonna be ready when that first one I sit underneath this spring, and I'm working on it, whether it's a slate call or mouth call or what have you. I don't want, when I get out there the night before, to be the first time I have that call in my hands.
So how many say on, and this is probably a make us all blush number, how many mouth calls will you kind of go through a year trying to find another really good one?
Quite a bit. I mean,
I knew that.
And I'm picky about it, and I try, obviously I build a lot of my own stuff, and got buddies that build them all over the place. And,
right.
and I run some of Denny's calls too, which are totally different than anything that's on the market. You run it a lot different. And Denny's calls have no cuts in them. And if you've ever heard Denny call, or anybody that runs Denny's calls good, they're raspy as it gets. And it's coming from your own guts to make it raspy. And I go through a lot, and I'm one of those guys too that I go through a lot, even in the morning when I'm turkey hunting, because when my call gets soggy and soaked, I got to put another one in.
Right. Yeah, they definitely change. So what other thing I was going to say for you, and I know this is different for everybody. for like a beginner wanting to learn on a mouth call, the thing for sure I would always say this for everybody: make it a priority to get a mouth call that you sound great, really soft. Just I call it a finishing yupper or whatever, but because that's one of the keys to having one. I mean, it's great but all these calls you talked about, box slates, they're just gorgeous today. A average person, beginner, can pick one up and in no short order sound just like a turkey. But the mouth call is harder to make it sound just like, actually. And so being really loud and not sounding good is not a good idea. So I'm just saying, what would be your advice on what type of cut? I know there's a million different kind of general types that a beginner could use and pick it up, because running a mouth call doesn't come overnight to a lot of people.
No.
And the other thing about cuts is everybody has their favorites.
Yes, they do.
Like you could put like a bat wing in your mouth, and the next guy could do it, and it sounds like crap. I mean, there's lots of calls that I can't use because they just my calling style doesn't work with them. But today's latex. You talk about technology.
Yes.
The latex of today is out of this world. And, pretty much that soft stuff, it used to be like the less reeds, the easier it was to use. And now it's the thinner reeds are easy. Some people like thick reeds. If you want a good all-round call, like a combo cut, which is a half cutter and a half V cut,
right?
Those are the calls that you can probably get a little bit of that softer stuff just because it has a lot more high end in it. Where you get more, and as another rule, the more cuts you put in that top reed, the raspier the call gets. Right. And a lot of times, takes a little more air or a little different airflow. And the biggest thing, like you said, Toxic, controlling that volume is more important, I think, than learning how to yelp. When you can call real soft and, kind of under your breath, you open, or you can crank it up and try to make one gobble 2 miles away on the same call. That's when you find the call that works for you. The rest of it is, and we look at information today. When we got started in the 70s and 80s, you had to go out there and sit with turkeys. Now you can hit YouTube, and there's 2,000 versions of a hen yelp and right at your fingertips in your house. In your boxers, you can sit there and practice at home where, you don't have to get up there underneath them and listen to them. We're at a, turkey hunters of today. If you're starting turkey hunting today with calls and decoys and ammunition and just the technology that's out there is leaps and bounds above where it was even 30 years ago.
Yeah, which means what you do for a living actually, ironically, is more important than ever. And that, because if we didn't be careful, we would kill way too many. Yeah. And maybe we're doing that now. I don't know. I'll leave that judgment to you and all the authorities. But so what you do as technology increases our efficiency, and, the biologists we've had on have talked about that, makes the game laws and what we're doing in management even more important than ever.
For sure.
If you look at, and I say this a lot, and I came from the decoys that are out today. If you took decoys away tomorrow, the success rate would drop. It'd be unbelievable how much the success rate would drop.
It would.
Or you took ground blinds away, or you took TSS away. You take this technology away and go back to where you had, a condom stretched between some aluminum siding or a tin can, and you had to make one read of prophylactic sound like a turkey and call that turkey up like it was not too long ago. And, you talk about, the game balls and stuff like that, Toxic. You think about not too long ago, at that turn of that century when market hunting, everything was gone. If you really blink and think about it, I was born in 1970, and 70 years before that, there wasn't a whole lot of wildlife here. And that's crazy. I mean, where we're at today when it comes to management and things like that. And like you said, we have made it a little bit easier for sure.
No question.
And there's no doubt about it. Look at camouflage. I mean, a great example, y'all are sitting behind, you get by in some shadows by a tree with some bottomland on, nothing, as you sit still, nothing can see you. We didn't have that till 1985, 6. Am I right there?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
85 and then 86, I started in 85, and then 86 I started selling some.
Right.
It's pretty amazing. But, Matt, I want to go back to the mouth call real quick. I want to learn something from you, and maybe we can educate our listeners as well. But is there a method, a tip or trick to determine if your air comes out the center or the right or left side? How do you determine, okay, I need a left-sided, my cut's on the left. How do you determine that?
Well, you kind of channel that air, and it's how you channel the air through your tongue. And I think the biggest key to using a mouth call is, don't put it in there and just blow into it or say, the S, like you want to bring that air from the same place. If you were cleaning a pair of glasses, sunglasses or reading glasses, you'd huff it to fog them up. That's where that air needs to come from. It's almost from your guts or your diaphragm.
Yep.
And, when you're blowing a mouth call right, you should be able to put a match in front of your mouth and not even, that flame shouldn't even flicker, because you're not expelling air. You want to bring that air from inside and come over your tongue with it. I'm old school. I learned to call on some of the very first mouth calls that my air is coming right down the middle, and learn to move my tongue around the call a little bit to kiki run or to get a high pitch. But you can learn to move the tip of your tongue or the middle of your tongue, wherever you're hitting that mouth call, to get that left side or right side. And whatever you're most comfortable with is what you should go with. It should be second nature. Just like when we're shooting a shotgun or shooting a rifle, when you pull that up, you've shot that rifle or that bow so many times that muscle memory is intact. And that's where practice and just using it a bunch comes into key. There to
and he's a good point. You envision you're actually talking with it and not blowing it.
Right.
Because there's a difference in the way you watch the jaw drops and but that's a good. I've never heard that before. It's a great comment to make. It's like shouldn't even feel any air coming out much.
Yeah.
Because it's
blowing fog on your glasses.
Blowing. You're applying
That's
it
a good way
to
to talk about
the
it,
read.
for sure.
I would say for that beginner, maybe one thing I thought about while you're talking about it too, and I'd ask the question, maybe start with the only 2 or 3 read at the most call, and maybe start with a center cut, because people kind of just pick them up and naturally are probably going to be a little left-handed or right-handed or whatever too. But I've found it, because I grew up blowing the calls Mr. Davis made, that he taught Ben Lee how to make them, and it was just a single prophylactic, read. And the only way you got any
frame, probably.
Yeah, it was a lead frame clamshell, and the only way you got any like rasp or rattle or whatever to it was by building some like wrinkles in the very back tension of it where there was like limp almost. So what my point is saying that, today I've never been able to be comfortable with a left hand or right hand flap cut, always some type of center cut for me. And so and the other thing is, like, for a call that's most of the time that I practice what I preach and try to find something that sounds great soft, it's been just a 2 or 3 read call with smaller, thinner, real thin prophylactic type latex myself.
Wow.
And everybody's different.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's pressure is different. The inside of the roof of your mouth's different. Your tongue's different.
Yep.
And everybody, that's one thing I've learned in teaching a lot of people through my career, trying to get them to use a mouth call. And one thing I've learned is no 2 ways are always the same. And whenever you get comfortable with it, you kind of stick with it. And you can change if you want to. You talk to any contest caller, there's one time in their career that they lose their Yelp and they can't figure it out. They've been doing good, winning, and I don't care who it is, if it's Walter Parrott or Matt Van Sicer, like there's one time in their career they've lost their Yelp and you got to go back and find it.
I'm still looking to find
awful.
mine.
Yeah, some of us are still looking.
So that's what happened to Bobby 2 years ago. He lost his Yelp.
I don't know if he ever found
That
his.
sounds awful.
Well, one way to always have your Yelp, though, is when you get proficient at a friction call like Matt is, too.
Yeah.
That Yelp will always be there for you.
Yep.
Yeah, unless you get carpal tunnel, you're in good shape.
Matt, this has been really good. We've enjoyed this a lot. Look,
I have too, buddy.
all our guests. Doctor, you got something?
No, it just means so much to me because it goes back in time so far, and you start to realize with the whole career in this that the things that matter the most are the things that span time. And you can, I hadn't seen Matt in a little while now, but then the chemistry and the respect and the regard for all the friendship and the good old days and the many things we've done together is always intact. And sometimes those aren't, and so when they are, like with Matt, I appreciate it. Really resonates for me. It means a lot because I just got taken back to 1986, 1987 through this whole process.
Yeah, well,
today.
all of his cool stories were not as much referencing the hunt; it was referencing like the people he was with. So,
That's what it's about
That
to me.
says a lot.
I love hunting and got the turkey hunt all over the place. I got one for you, Toxie. I wanted to tell you that you probably don't know, and it's pretty special to me. But when I worked for Hunter Specialties, we obviously worked with another camo company and was there for a long time. But when I first met Bob Dixon, he sent me a set of original mossy oak, and I still have it in the packaging today.
Wow.
Oh wow!
How about
How
that?
about that?
Yeah,
Yeah, he was
mean,
one. I don't have to tell you, he was one of a kind.
Yeah.
You're dang right.
He was one of a kind.
Well, so Matt, we always ask our guests a trivia question, and somebody left a review wins a prize. But occasionally we have a guest that we think is so smart that we kind of turn the table and say, "Would you like to ask us a trivia question?" And so I'm going to look at you. Do you have some kind of trivia you'd like to ask us, or we can have one for you?
All right. I don't have a really good one, but I'll throw one out there, and y'all probably already know this. But
Well, we need an easy one.
But hang on, Matt.
hold on.
Nobody's ever stumped us. We're
that's not true.
100% on these things. So, Richie, who
all
are
right, this one might be too easy, but I'm going to go for it.
I didn't think
So,
Bobby's ever even gotten one right. What are you talking about?
so
Toxie says it every time.
Richie? Who are we playing for?
We're
here?
playing for GLT 39. He left a review.
GLT 39.
So for your chance to win the prize, make sure you leave a review after you listen to the podcast.
All right.
And the prize is some Duke dog-proof traps.
All right.
That is a good prize.
That is a great. Was the review a good review?
It was a 5-star review, so I guess it was pretty good.
How about
Wow.
that?
They all
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Well, and so guys, look, we're about to give away in a few weeks these turtle boxes.
Yes, we got
And-
one with the Avid Boat. Don't forget to sign up for it.
Yes, the Avid Boat. That's right. So there's a lot of reasons we learn from the reviews. So that's great that people do that. So, all right, Matt, we're going to look back at you. I don't have a lot of faith. I feel like we're going to know this right off the top of our head.
Oh my goodness!
I do too.
Oh.
I did too, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
All right.
So when you look at turkey calls, mouth calls, and like Toxie said, when it first, it goes way back, but when they first became marketed and sold, everything was a straight reeded call. And, they started cutting a little bit on the ends, but one of the most popular calls that I'd say that brought mouth diaphragms where it is today was called a cutter style call. It had a tear out on one end, and it made the call raspy. And the gentleman, and I'm going to give it away if I go too deep, but do you guys know who invented the cutter style mouth call?
Well, yes, of course we do.
I think I remember the first name associated with it, but
I think it's Paul Butsky.
I was
Yeah,
going to say.
y'all suck. It's exactly who it was.
All right,
You know,
ring the bell, Bobby.
He was the
100%.
He was the other guy that I just was mesmerized with. In your same day, I think you did. He did this like 1 year before you won the. You set precedent winning the Grand National with the friction call. He came out for his Grand National routine. I think this is the last time he won it because right before you did that, he was like Matt Van Sysis today. He was like the man when the stage was set.
Right.
But he was the first one that ever came out with the same mouth call, didn't change anything, and he was calling like two hens calling at each other, and there were two distinctly different yelps back and answering each other.
With the same call in his
With the
mouth?
same call in his mouth and putting his hands and throwing it over here and throwing it over there. It was like, oh my gosh, that's some talent right there.
Yeah, Paul's one of my heroes. Dick Kirby. Rest his soul. Dick and Chris and I are still great friends today. You look at the people that are out there. Billy McCoy.
Oh yeah.
Billy's one of my heroes, and one of the cool things that happened to me when I was a kid, all those guys helped me. Every single one of them. Billy would help me, as always had his hand out there, and that's one of the things that I've tried to do too. In my career is I'm always there to help somebody learn to be better if they want to be a better caller, and I think that's something that when we look at across the country, we're facing a little bit of a decline in hunters, and it's hard to imagine, but there's lots of things out there, but we all got to do a better job of helping the next generation, even if we don't know that person. We all got to lend a hand, because like I said, that's one way that we all can make sure that we're leaving it better than we found it.
And like I said too, without the access, it all means nothing. So the things whatever we can do to create more access, and of course, by helping people be a better gamekeeper, there's more access because everybody's property is more productive too. But man, access to all this hunting land and public hunting land and helping keep that in a quality experience for people is absolutely job one.
Mm-hmm. So, Matt, well said. And look, I had created a trivia question for you that I'm
Okay.
expecting that you will know, but I think our listeners we always try to teach them something. I think people could learn something from this. So, Richie,
Let's
would
go
you
for another one.
let's ask him a question.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
All right. What does Pennsylvania translate to or mean?
Hell if I know.
That's right. Ding.
So not only did we answer your question, we have stumped you with ours. And I wasn't trying to stump you, Matt.
Hey, I'm coming back. If I ever get the chance to do this again, I'm coming in a lot harder next time.
What does it mean, Bobby?
So
Richie?
Penn was a British
William
admiral.
Penn.
Yeah, well, no,
William
it wasn't
Penn.
William Penn, but it was an admiral named Penn. But Sylvania
Yeah.
is the important part here.
Sylvania means woods.
Penn's Woods.
Penn's Woods.
Penn's Woods, yeah.
There's another
I
great
should have
one.
known that.
There's another great one of the old days too.
Well, William Penn is, you know, you know what? I'm going to use this today because we have a bunch of stuff knowers that work here.
All right.
Yeah,
And
it's-
I bet I can I bet I can get some people.
Yeah, I don't think it's William Penn. I think there was an admiral named Penn.
Penn's
but,
Woods.
But Penn's
I remember
Woods.
learning about Penn's Woods like maybe in 7th or 8th grade or something.
I wonder if that's where he got the name for Penn's Woods calls. You know,
Oh, it is for sure. Penn's Woods is a term that's used quite a bit, and Penn's Woods used to be a big Penn's Woods game calls, which was in
Yeah.
Jim.
Delmont, Pennsylvania. They were the very first turkey call company to become national.
Yeah.
About that.
You know, all the other calls were like a regional, this and that. And Penn's Woods was the first one to take it coast to coast.
Well, so I think Matt knew the answer to this, but the pressure of being on our podcast,
Yeah.
it probably just got to him.
probably did. It's like Jeopardy.
It's what
Well,
it
he's
is.
such
You're
a
like
humble
Alex
guy. He didn't
Trebek.
want to show off. You know?
Yeah, he is.
I'm not, Bobby. There's one thing I'm not smart. I just fake a lot of things.
Well, I tell you what,
Good
Matt,
answer.
the state of Pennsylvania is lucky to have you.
Yes.
The whole turkey hunting culture is very proud of you and lucky to have had you just help everybody through all these years. When we're listening to you tell your story and the wisdom that you have. You're an impressive person.
Well, I'm pretty fortunate and blessed to have the upbringing that I've had to be involved with the industry and great friends like you all my whole life. And I feel even more blessed to be able to be a part of that. You know, I just, you know, I watched Mossy Oak start. I watched a whole lot of things happen, and I took it for granted probably when I was younger, and now I realize, you know, how awesome it was to be a part of that industry when I was, and still am. I mean, we still get to the trade
Oh,
shows.
you
We're
always
still-
will be. Absolutely.
we still I try to bring, you know, one thing here in PA too with our agency, we connect with the industry more than we ever did as a commission, and I think it's important because the bottom line is we're all on the same team and we all got to work together to make things happen.
And I would encourage other state agencies to take a look at what y'all are doing because it's really smart.
And, mimic.
You know, y'all can all learn from each other, but I know they can learn from what you're doing there and what you brought to them.
That's right.
Yeah,
very
I like to schedule those meetings around turkey season. I think that's the best time to have a meeting.
Well, speaking of that, Lanny and I will find some dates and we'll shoot them to you that we could come to up there to Penn's Woods.
Oh, he's
and-
look.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Never
anytime.
have a
Bring your mouth
podcast.
rubbers.
He's going to hit you up for a hunt if he's going to have you on as a guest.
Well, yeah.
I got you.
I mean,
All right, guys. So let's turn this
May
off.
as well.
Turn this
Gotta
back
watch
around.
'em.
Have you got any shout outs you need to give before we get off? Anything we hadn't covered you felt like you need to say?
Yeah, you know, thank you. First of all, thank y'all. Amazing time, you know, amazing company, and you know, I think a lot of companies, a lot of people need to look at Mossy Oak and how they're engaged, you know, in the conservation world. I think that's important, and you know, every time we end a podcast, because it's changed for me, and I ask every guest, no matter if they work for us or if they're wherever they're at, I ask them what conservation means to you. And I think that's important. If everybody could go home tonight and just think about that deep, what conservation means to you personally, and every day of your life, try to think about something you can do better and to make it better. Because it's been, if you're listening to Gamekeeper, or if you're buying a hunting license or a turkey call, you're a conservationist. And even if you can take it up 1 degree, you're going to leave it better than you found it. And when you're out there this spring, couple things: be safe. You know, obviously you want to know where your target is. Don't even pop that safety off till you know what's in front of you and behind and beyond. And the other thing is, and this is really important to me, spray yourself down with
Oh, yeah.
promethium of some sort and keep them dang ticks off of you, because nobody out there wants to go through what folks have to go through with Lyme disease. I think that's I try to preach that everywhere I go, because I got it pretty bad in 2012, and I don't want anybody to go through that.
Great
Wes,
great
words.
advice.
That is. I didn't see that coming. But
No,
thank you for
man,
saying
absolutely. That's safety. He brought up safety.
safety,
Everybody
that's
thinks
it.
about safety. Be careful. Don't shoot. Be careful. But the safety in turkey hunting is like, we talk about snakes but that's such a tiny chance of
Yeah,
that.
ticks are
as
way
opposed to like
scarier.
a huge
No
chance
doubt.
of catching something from ticks now, and those diseases have increased. And great tip.
Yep. Matt, once again, you impress us. Once again.
I don't know about that.
Oh yeah.
It's February. Everybody got cabin fever.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, Matt, we've enjoyed it. I think we taught you something, and
Yeah, we
I
did.
know we learned something.
For sure. Yeah, hopefully we can get together and break bread. That would be great. Somehow.
Let's do it. We'll see you in Nashville for sure.
all right, that sounds like a plan. Is what
It
that
does.
sounds
Yeah.
like. So
All right, let's
I'm
go.
looking around the room. Richie, wake up over there.
Well, I got one thing to add to you, Bobby. But, what really hit me at home was when Matt was talking about helping your fellow turkey hunters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think a good way would be you maybe taking me on a hunt there on the Ponderosa there.
That would be a great
Yeah,
idea.
or the kids.
Yeah.
There's no turkeys over there. No.
Of course there's
But
no
if I tell you what,
turkeys
you
over
find a place that's got some turkeys, I'll go with you.
I'm sure you will, Bobby.
All right. So looking around the room, Dudley, why don't Dudley, you pay attention to me now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Say goodbye, Dudley.
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.